What's this other jet doing? What's this other jet doing?
Of course, the major concern is human loss.
Oh my God, another plane has just hit.
Oh, another one just hit.
Oh my God.
My God.
Just flew directly over my building.
Oh my goodness.
Oh God.
There's another one.
There was another one.
Running away very, very quickly. There are more explosions further down the building.
Explosion.
The building's exploding right now. You got people running up the street. Everybody's panicking.
September 11th, 2001, the day America came under terrorist attack. I don't think any of us will forget where we were when we first heard the news. I, for one, was casually settling in for just another routine day of work. When the first plane hit, I think I, like most people, thought it nothing more than a freak accident. And then the second crash, and I think collectively, we all knew. And things would never be quite as innocent for Americans as they were the day prior. This, however, is not another video of footage from that fateful day. I suppose there are already enough videos of every angle showing the attack by now. No, this video is a brief dedication to a handful of the victims and a few of the survivors of the attacks against America on 9/11. Maybe not as exciting as the action videos, but we hope you will bear with us as we take a few minutes to shed a little light on a few of those who were affected the most by the events of that day. My name is Unit 1, and this is Good Hope Media. Scott Davidson, the firefighter hero who inspired Pete Davidson. On the morning of September 11th, 2001, a fire truck thundered across the Brooklyn Bridge toward the burning towers of the World Trade Center. A photographer captured the moment. Ladder Company 118 racing toward danger, smoke billowing in the distance. Among the firefighters on board was Scott Davidson, a devoted public servant and the father of a boy who would one day become comedian and actor Pete Davidson. Scott Davidson grew up in New York City, where the call to serve had been with him for as long as he could remember. To him, firefighting was more than a career. It was, as he once said, the greatest job in America. In 1994, just after welcoming his newborn son Pete into the world, Scott passed the firefighter's exam and joined the New York City Fire Department. 7 years later, he was on duty with Ladder 118 in Brooklyn when American Airlines Flight 11 struck the North Tower at 8:46 a.m. Minutes later, United Airlines Flight 175 slammed into the South Tower. Without hesitation, Scott and his crew sped toward Manhattan. Their mission took them to the Marriott World Trade Center, a hotel caught in the shadow of both collapsing skyscrapers. Survivors remember seeing the 118 marked helmets rushing through the smoke and chaos to pull people to safety. None of the men from Ladder 118 made it out alive. Scott left behind his wife, Amy, his young daughter, Casey, and 7-year-old Pete. In later years, Pete would admit he was grateful he was too young to fully understand the tragedy at the time, yet the loss shaped his life in profound ways. He has spoken openly about the mental health struggles that followed, including moments of deep depression and suicidal thoughts. Despite the pain, Pete found ways to honor his father's legacy. He tattooed Scott's badge number on his arm and poured his grief and memories into his 2020 film, The King of Staten Island, telling the story of a young man navigating life after losing his firefighter father. One of the main reasons why I wanted to make this film and tell this story was because I wanted this chapter in my life to be closed, Pete told Sky News. Not forgotten, but I wanted to be able to move on and show that it's okay to have issues, and it's okay to struggle, and that you're not alone, and that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Scott Davidson's final moments were spent running toward danger so that others might live. His bravery endures, not just in the photographs from that day, but in the legacy carried forward by the son who still calls him his hero. Remembering firefighter Danny Sewer. On September 11, 2001, New York City firefighter Danny Sewer was among the first to respond to the burning World Trade Center. As he and his crew rushed toward the South Tower, tragedy struck in a way no one could have imagined. Someone who had fallen from the building landed on him, killing him instantly. He was the first firefighter lost that day. Danny loved being a firefighter. It wasn't just a job, it was who he was. He used to joke with his wife, Nancy, If we won the lottery, you could quit your job, but I'd never quit the fire department. Even on vacation, he couldn't resist calling the firehouse. Did I miss anything? I miss a good job? He'd ask, half teasing, half hoping for a story. On the morning of 9/11, Nancy turned on the TV and instantly knew this was bad. She watched the chaos unfold, a wave of panic rising in her chest. Then the phone rang. It was Brian from the firehouse. His voice was careful, measured. "Nancy, Danny's been hurt. I'm coming to get you." She knew then. They don't come for you if it's just a broken arm. The streets to Bellevue Hospital were eerily empty. Brian drove in silence. Outside the hospital, nurses and doctors stood waiting, but no one was arriving. Inside, the hallway was lined with firefighters from Danny's station. Chief Jankowski stood and met her eyes. "Where is he?" she demanded. He hesitated. "Nancy? Where is he?" "He's gone." Chris Berry, one of the men with Danny that day, stood nearby, his face ashen. No one could meet her gaze. They explained what had happened, how the impact shattered Danny's forehead, broke his nose, his eye socket, his neck. Nancy went to him, kissed his cheek, and whispered in his ear that she would always love him, and that their daughter, Brianna, would know him. Know that he was a good man, a wonderful man, who would always be part of their lives. She even found a trace of his humor in the moment. Danny had played football since age 6 and had never broken his nose. Now she thought, he's probably annoyed he finally did. Later, Nancy learned the person who had fallen on him was a woman. People sometimes asked if she was angry. "Are you kidding me?" she replied. What were her last thoughts? Danny was heading into the South Tower. It collapsed not long after. Whether it was that falling body or the building itself, Nancy knows he wouldn't have survived the day. But the way he lived, with courage, loyalty, and love, is how he'll always be remembered. Remembering Leroy Homer, a wife's story from September 11th. On September 11th, 2001, Melody Homer's world changed forever. Her husband, Leroy Homer, was the first officer on United Airlines Flight 93, the plane that was hijacked and ultimately crashed into a field in Pennsylvania, killing all 37 passengers and 7 crew members on board. Flying for United Airlines had always been Leroy's dream. Long before he met Melody, he had traveled the world, filling photo albums with snapshots from every destination. On the back of each photo, he'd carefully write the name of the place. When Melody asked why, he smiled and said, "What if I forget when I'm old?" Even after they married, Leroy's love for travel never faded. He'd send Melody postcards from faraway places, ones that often arrived weeks after he was already home. Those postcards, once small tokens of love, would later become precious keepsakes. The morning of September 11 began like any other, until Melody turned on the television. The phone started ringing, with friends and family asking if she knew where Leroy was. Anxiety began to take hold. She called United Airlines for reassurance. The person on the other end told her, "Don't worry, I promise you, everything is okay." They even offered to send Leroy a message in the cockpit. Melody agreed, hoping it might reach him. "Please just tell him I wanted to make sure he was okay," she said, unaware of the unfolding tragedy. Later, another call came from United. This time, the voice on the line hesitated. "Are you alone?" the caller asked before delivering the words Melody will never forget. "I think that last plane was Leroy's." Standing by the window, Melody's world collapsed. She pounded her hand against the glass, repeating in disbelief, No. You promised me that he was okay." Leroy Homer's life was cut short that day, but his legacy of dedication, kindness, and love lives on in the memories of those who knew him best. Mark Bingham, the last man on board who refused to surrender. The morning of September 11th, 2001, begins in a blur for Mark Bingham. He oversleeps. He scrambles. A frantic drive to the Newark airport, a half laugh, half gasp into the phone. "Thanks for driving so crazy to get me here." Moments later, he slips into first class, the last passenger aboard United Airlines Flight 93, orange juice in hand. 46 minutes into the flight, the cabin's fragile calm shatters. The cockpit is breached. Voices change. The air thickens. Mark makes the first of his calls. To his aunt, "I want to let you guys know that I love you, in case I don't see you again. I'm on United Airlines Flight 93. It's being hijacked." To his mother, words edged with resolve. She can hear it, her 6'4" son, a rugby player, already shifting into action, the gears turning. Mark finds others ready to resist. Todd Beamer, Tom Burnett, Jeremy Glick. A plan forms fast, urgent, unspoken but understood. Storm the cockpit, take back control. Later, the cockpit voice recordings will confirm it. Mark's family will hear his voice in those final minutes. His uncle will recall the strange pride within the horror. He was right up front saying, "Pull it up," and trying to do something. The attempt ends in a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Everyone aboard is lost, but Washington, D.C. is spared. The intended target, believed to be the U.S. Capitol, never sees the plane's shadow. Mark Bingham's courage becomes legend. He is remembered not only as a passenger who fought back, but as an openly gay man whose heroism shattered stereotypes. In a time when media too often confined gay men to narrow images, his story, fierce, fearless, defiant, stands as a testament that bravery has no boundaries. Janelle Guzman McMillan, the last survivor, pulled from the 9/11 rubble. On the morning of September 11, 2001, Janelle Guzman McMillan's day began like any other. She arrived at her job as an assistant at the Port Authority office on the 64th floor of the North Tower, grabbed a bagel for breakfast, and exchanged small talk with a coworker. Then the building shook. American Airlines Flight 11 had struck the tower. At first, Guzman McMillan stayed put. A Trinidadian immigrant who had overstayed her U.S. visa, she feared leaving her desk might draw unwanted attention. She sat with a colleague, watching in disbelief, as papers and debris swirled outside the windows. But when smoke began to seep into the office through the elevator shafts, she and her coworker decided to evacuate. They had only descended to the 13th floor when the world collapsed around them. Everything just went boom, she later told People. Everything was crumbling and coming on top of me. When the dust settled, Guzman McMillan was pinned under a mountain of steel and concrete. She drifted in and out of consciousness, trapped in darkness. Hours blurred into each other. I felt like I was there forever, she recalled. I just thought I was dreaming. I didn't know if anybody was going to find me. I just laid there. 27 hours passed. Then, on the morning of September 12th, she heard a voice. "I've got you, Janelle," the man said. "My name is Paul, and you're going to be okay." Rescuers freed her, the last person pulled alive from the rubble of the World Trade Center. But to this day, she has never been able to find Paul. "We never found him," she told People. "So we've come to the conclusion that Paul truly was my angel." Todd Beamer, the United 93 passenger who helped stop a national tragedy. On the morning of September 11, 2001, Todd Beamer boarded United Airlines Flight 93 without knowing he was stepping into history. The 32-year-old businessman, like fellow passenger Mark Bingham, would soon face an unimaginable choice and rise to meet it. 46 minutes into the flight, 4 al-Qaeda terrorists seized control of the aircraft. Amid the chaos, Beamer tried calling his family, but the connections kept failing. Determined to get a message out, he reached a GTE airphone operator named Lisa Jefferson. Calm but urgent, he told Jefferson that the plane had been hijacked and one of the attackers was wearing a bomb. By then, news of the attacks on the World Trade Center had already spread, and Beamer understood the grim reality. Their flight was part of a larger, deadly plan. Jefferson offered to connect him to his wife, but Beamer declined, not wanting to risk a sudden disconnection. Instead, he asked her to tell his wife that he loved her and their children. The two prayed together, reciting the Lord's Prayer over the phone. Suddenly, the plane pitched sharply. Beamer's voice steadied as he revealed that he and other passengers, Bingham, Tom Burnett, and Jeremy Glick among them, had a plan to fight back. "Are you ready?" he asked his fellow passengers. "Okay, let's roll." Those words, captured by Jefferson, became a rallying cry for American courage. The passengers charged the cockpit, confronting the hijackers in a desperate attempt to regain control. They couldn't land the plane, but they did force it to crash in a Pennsylvania field, far from its likely target, the U.S. Capitol. Todd Beamer's final act, and his unforgettable words, remain a symbol of defiance and heroism in one of America's darkest hours. Brian Sweeney, the 9/11 passenger who left his wife a final gift of love. When Brian Sweeney boarded United Airlines Flight 175 on the morning of September 11, 2001, it was just another work trip. The former U.S. Navy pilot turned defense contractor often traveled from Boston to Los Angeles. But that day, the routine would end in tragedy and in a final, unforgettable act of love. About 3 years earlier, Brian had met Julie in a Philadelphia bar. At 6'3" with the easy confidence of a naval aviator, he caught her attention immediately. Their connection was instant. Soon, they were married, living in Massachusetts, and building a life together. She as a teacher, he in the defense industry. That morning, as Julie taught her class, 4 al-Qaeda terrorists seized control of Flight 175. Realizing the hijacking's grim outcome, Brian reached for the only link he had left to her: an airphone. "Jules, this is Brian," his voicemail began, his voice steady despite the unthinkable. "Listen, I'm on an airplane that's been hijacked. If things don't go well, and it's not looking good, I just want you to know I absolutely love you. I want you to do good, go have good times. Same to my parents and everybody. I'll see you when you get there. Bye, babe. I hope I call you." At 9:03 a.m., Flight 175 struck the South Tower of the World Trade Center. Julie wouldn't hear his message until she came home that afternoon. A year later, she chose to share it publicly, hoping it might offer comfort to others who lost loved ones that day. "I'm thankful for it. So thankful," she said. "At least I know, without a shadow of a doubt, what he was thinking." The calmness in his voice soothed me. It's powerful. He made very powerful statements with that message. In less than a minute, Brian Sweeney's final words carried both farewell and hope, a voice from the edge of tragedy that still speaks of love, courage, and grace. Dorothy Morgan, the 9/11 victim identified 2 decades later. For 20 years, the family of Dorothy Morgan lived in a painful limbo, not knowing for certain what had happened to her on September 11, 2001. That morning, Dorothy, an insurance broker for Marsh & McLennan, arrived at her office on the 94th floor of the North Tower. At 8:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11 struck the building between floors 93 and 99. Though the crash site included her floor, her family clung to hope. Her daughter, Nikaya, imagined a different ending. "Maybe she had amnesia and was released from the hospital," she told CNN. "I had a whole story in my head, that she was out there living life, happy." In the years that followed, recovery teams worked tirelessly to identify victims. The task was daunting. Many remains were reduced to fragments as small as a tic-tac. DNA testing advanced slowly, each breakthrough bringing answers to some families, but not to Dorothy's. Then, in August 2021, 2 decades after the attacks, the call finally came. Forensic teams had matched DNA to Dorothy's remains. She became the 1,646th victim identified from 9/11, alongside another man whose family wished to remain anonymous. For her loved ones, the moment was both a resolution and a reopening of grief. "You suddenly have to decide what to do with a loved one who died 20 years ago," Nikaya told the New York Times. "It's almost like reopening old wounds. Over time, you feel like you're getting better, and then this happens 20 years later, and you're dealing with it all over again." Dorothy Morgan's story is a reminder of the deep, enduring impact of 9/11 and of the families who waited years, even decades, to bring their loved ones home. Marcy Borders, the Dust Lady of 9/11. Some images from September 11, 2001 have become seared into public memory. One of the most haunting is the photograph of Marcy Borders, her face, hair, and clothes completely coated in a pale gray film, earning her the name the Dust Lady. That morning, 28-year-old Borders took the elevator to the 81st floor of the North Tower, where she'd recently started working as a clerical assistant at Bank of America. At 8:46 a.m., the first hijacked plane, American Airlines Flight 11, tore through floors 93 to 99, just 12 stories above her. "My supervisor thought a small jet plane might have nipped us," Borders later recalled to The Guardian. "We had no idea what was going on." The building shuddered. Borders felt the violent vibrations, heard the deafening explosion, and saw what looked at first like office chairs and papers falling past the windows, but soon realized some of them were people. Panic set in. She joined the flood of evacuees moving down the stairwell, passing firefighters headed in the opposite direction toward the danger. When she finally reached the ground floor, the South Tower collapsed nearby. A rolling wall of dust and debris thundered toward her. "I took chase from this cloud of dust and smoke that was following me," she said. "Once it caught me, it threw me on my hands and knees. Every time I inhaled, my mouth filled up with it. I was choking. I kept saying out loud, 'I don't want to die. I don't want to die.'" Borders survived that day, but the trauma never fully left her. In 2015, she died of stomach cancer at age 42, an illness some believe may have been linked to the toxic dust she breathed in during the attacks. Her image remains one of the most enduring symbols of 9/11, a human face frozen in the moment the world changed forever. So, that's the end of our tribute to the victims of September 11th, 2001. Some stories are sad, but we believe most, if not all, are inspiring. We could have surely gone further, as the victims and their stories are numerous, and the video would have gone on forever. However, we did want to take time to pay homage to those who lived through that day and those who didn't make it by putting the faces to the stories. They were all victims who deserve recognition. We would like to thank you for staying until the end of our video. We do realize it may not have been the most uplifting, but we hope you found something inspiring from the power of the human spirit displayed in the way they lived their lives. Also, in the will to hope, to fight back, and for those family members left behind, the will to survive. Until the next time, this is Unit 1, signing off for Good Hope Media. Stay safe and keep it